The year was 2135. Humanity had reached the stars, built vast colonies on distant worlds, and established intergalactic trade routes that stretched from one end of the galaxy to the other. Yet, despite their achievements, Earth still remained the heart of it all. The planet that had borne humanity's existence was now a symbol of fragility, an ancient relic in the eyes of the rest of the universe, a planet surrounded by the vast, cold, indifferent cosmos. Captain Rhea Caldwell sat in the command chair of the Ares, a colossal warship that represented humanity's strength and, at times, its greatest weakness. The ship floated in the silent expanse of space above Earth, her fleet of ships forming a protective barrier around the fragile planet. Caldwell wasn't a soldier, but she was a leader born from the crucible of conflict, and her resolve had been tested time and again. Today, though, felt different. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. A flash of red light broke her concentration. The sensor alarms on the console in front of her blared, alerting her to the sudden appearance of an unknown fleet. Her heart quickened as the image of the approaching ships filled the holographic display in front of her. The ships were massive, unfamiliar, alien designs. Their silhouette was both sleek and imposing, like an apex predator on the hunt. "Report." Caldwell's voice cut through the tension, steady and sharp. "Fleet detected, Captain. Unknown ships, multiple signatures." Lieutenant Jacobs responded, his voice barely audible over the noise of the alarm. Caldwell's brow furrowed. She had seen her share of hostile forces, but nothing like this. The ships weren't broadcasting any identification, and their movements were anything but peaceful. Earth had made enemies, yes, but they had never dared to approach the heart of humanity's territory like this. "Track their trajectory. I want to know where they're heading. And send a distress signal to command. It's time we stop pretending to be civilized." Caldwell's words carried weight, and the crew knew what she meant. The time for diplomacy, for politeness, was over. Humanity had been pushed too far. For decades they had been forced into compliance with galactic treaties, respecting the so-called rules of engagement that others had set for them. But those days were numbered. If these unknown ships dared to threaten Earth, they would face the consequences of underestimating humanity's resolve. The communication officer, Lieutenant Harper, tapped a few keys on her console and turned to face the captain. "Message sent, Captain? We've also broadcasted a warning signal across all frequencies." Caldwell nodded, her eyes fixed on the incoming fleet. The silence that followed was deafening. The crew waited, but no response came. There was only the cold vastness of space stretching endlessly in all directions, punctuated by the flashing red lights that illuminated the command deck. "We're being hailed," Jacobs announced, breaking the silence. The voice that came through the comms was cold, mechanical, and devoid of any warmth. "Earth," the voice intoned. "You have violated the terms of the Concord. We are here to enforce compliance. Stand down immediately, or face the consequences." Caldwell's fingers curled into a fist. She recognized the voice. It belonged to the Icarans, a race that had once shared a tenuous peace with humanity. That peace, however, had always been built on the fragile foundation of fear, and the Icarans had made no secret of their disdain for Earth. For years they had imposed sanctions and restrictions, demanding that humanity abide by their codes of conduct. But now this was an invasion, plain and simple. "Tell them this, Lieutenant," Caldwell said, her voice low and filled with a dangerous calm. "This is Earth's final warning. Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be civilized." There was a pause, and then the comms crackled back to life. "You speak as if you have a choice, Earthling. You are weak. Your civilization is a relic, and your defenses are nothing compared to the might of the Icaran fleet." Caldwell's lips curled into a smile. The Icarans had underestimated humanity once again. They thought that after centuries of holding back, Earth would be nothing but a shadow of its former self. They thought wrong. Caldwell had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. She had seen it in the battle for Mars, in the desperate struggle for resources on the moons of Jupiter, and in the dark corridors of long-forgotten space stations. Humanity had an indomitable spirit, and it was about to be unleashed. "Prepare for battle," Caldwell commanded, her tone cold and resolute. "This is no longer about diplomacy. This is about survival." The crew scrambled into action. Weapons systems powered up, shields were reinforced, and tactical plans were drawn up in a matter of seconds. Caldwell stood from her chair, her eyes never leaving the Acheran fleet on the view screen. She could feel the tension in the air, the collective breath of her crew held in anticipation. There was no turning back now. The Acherans had made their move, and humanity would not back down. Earth would defend itself, no matter the cost. The first salvo from the Acheran fleet came without warning, massive beams of energy that tore through the space between them and Earth, the power of each blast capable of decimating entire cities. But Caldwell was ready. The Ares and her fleet raised their shields, absorbing the brunt of the attack. The ship shook under the strain, but it held firm. "Return fire," Caldwell commanded, her voice sharp and commanding. The cannons on the Ares roared to life, releasing their own devastating barrage toward the Acheran fleet. The first strike hit its mark, a massive explosion of blue energy that sent ripples through the enemy fleet. The Acherans were momentarily stunned, but it wasn't enough. They quickly regrouped, firing back with greater intensity. Caldwell watched the battle unfold with a mixture of calm and fury. This was it, the moment where humanity's strength would either be recognized or crushed. And as the Ares engines roared to life, she knew one thing for certain: Earth would not go quietly into the night. "Let them remember," she muttered more to herself than anyone else on the bridge, "that Earth is not a relic. We are the future." And with that, the battle for humanity's survival began. This opening chapter sets the stage for a high-stakes battle between Earth and the alien Acherans. Captain Caldwell represents a new breed of leadership, one that is willing to cast aside diplomacy in favor of survival. The stakes are clear: Earth's future is on the line, and humanity is ready to show its strength, no matter the cost. The battle had raged for hours, but to Captain Rhea Caldwell, it felt like an eternity. The Acheran fleet had proven more formidable than she had anticipated, but humanity's resolve was unyielding. The Ares was holding strong, its powerful weapons systems unleashing torrents of energy toward the enemy, but the Acherans were relentless, their ships maneuvering with a precision that left little room for error. Each strike from the Acherans was a blow to Earth's defenses, but each return fire from the Ares was a declaration of survival. Caldwell stood at the bridge's command console, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. The enemy fleet was splitting into smaller groups, an attempt to overwhelm her defenses. The alien ships, sleek and ominous, shimmered against the backdrop of space, their black hulls cutting through the stars like predatory beasts. Caldwell's knuckles tightened around the armrests of her chair. She had seen strategy before, but this was something different, something far more sophisticated. The Acherans had learned. And they had come prepared. "Captain," Lieutenant Jacobs called out, his voice strained with urgency. "We've detected a new formation. They're surrounding us. I don't know how much longer we can hold out." Caldwell's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. The Acherans weren't just attacking, they were playing a game of cat and mouse, circling, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was a tactic she had only seen used by the most ruthless of commanders. "Reinforce shields! All energy to the aft and starboard," Caldwell commanded, her voice unwavering. She wasn't going to lose her ship, not like this. The Ares shuddered as the energy surged through its systems, redirecting its defenses. But it wasn't enough. The Acheran ships unleashed another barrage, this time from multiple angles. The shields flickered, absorbing some of the energy, but the impact left the ship reeling. "Damage report," Caldwell snapped. "Minor hull breaches on deck 3 and 4, Lieutenant Harper replied, her face pale with concern. "We're holding, but not for long." Caldwell clenched her jaw, trying to suppress the rising panic. The Ares had been built for battles like this, but every ship had its limits. And they were nearing theirs. "I want all non-essential personnel to evacuate to the secondary hulls," Caldwell ordered, her voice calm but commanding. "Prepare for emergency maneuvers." The bridge crew worked in a frenzy, their fingers flying over consoles, trying to mitigate the damage. But even as they worked, Caldwell couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. She needed a plan, something bold, something that would change the tide of the battle. "Captain, we've just received a message from command," Lieutenant Jacobs said, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and disbelief. "They've sent reinforcements. The Earth fleet is on its way." Caldwell's eyes narrowed. It was good news, but not enough. The Icarans were too well positioned, and the reinforcements would arrive too late to make a difference. She needed to act now, to take the initiative and disrupt the enemy's strategy. "Lieutenant Jacobs, track their flagship," Caldwell ordered. "I want the coordinates for their command ship. We're going to hit them where it hurts." "But Captain, we don't have enough firepower," Jacobs protested. "If we launch a full assault on their flagship, we risk losing the entire fleet. It's a suicide mission." Caldwell turned to him, her expression hardening. "Then we'll make it a costly one. If we're going down, we're taking them with us." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The crew knew what it meant. Caldwell was willing to sacrifice everything for one final strike, a strike that could shift the course of the battle, or end it completely. "Prepare all weapons," Caldwell continued, her voice unwavering. "We're going for the flagship. This is our only shot." Jacobs didn't argue. He knew better than anyone that the captain's resolve was unbreakable. "Aye, Captain." "Weapons powering up." Caldwell took a deep breath, her mind racing through the possibilities. If she could take out the flagship, it would cripple the Icaran fleet. The remaining ships would scatter, disorganized and vulnerable. But if she failed, if the attack didn't succeed, Earth would be left at the mercy of the invaders. "Target their main reactor," Caldwell instructed, her voice cold and determined. "Fire on my mark." The crew braced for impact, their eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Icaran flagship loomed large, a behemoth of technology and power, its shields flickering in and out of existence as it fired relentlessly at the Ares. "Captain, we've got an incoming shot," Jacobs warned. The Ares shook violently as the Icaran weapon struck. The hull groaned under the pressure, and sparks flew from damaged consoles. Caldwell's knuckles turned white as she gripped the armrests tighter. "Hold steady," she muttered under her breath. "This is it." "Ready to fire, Captain," Jacobs called out. "On your mark." The Ares shuddered again, this time a deeper, more ominous rumble that sent a chill down Caldwell's spine. They were moments away from being overwhelmed. But she had to act. "Now!" Caldwell shouted. The Ares fired, its weapons unleashing a torrent of destructive energy toward the Icaran flagship. The blast struck the flagship's main reactor, the explosion lighting up space like a supernova. The flagship's shields faltered, and for a brief moment, the crew of the Ares watched in awe as the ship cracked under the pressure. But the Icarans were resilient. Their flagship wasn't down yet. The ship groaned again, the explosion reverberating through the hull. The Icarans retaliated immediately, but Caldwell wasn't done. She wasn't going to give up. "We've damaged their reactor," Jacobs said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're destabilizing. They can't hold much longer." Caldwell didn't smile, didn't cheer. She only watched, her expression fixed and resolute. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, the tide was turning. They had struck a blow, and now they had to see it through. As the Icaran flagship began to list, its once pristine hull now burning and cracked, Caldwell knew one thing for sure: Earth wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. "Now we finish this," she said, her voice a whisper of determination. The fight had only just begun. The Icaran flagship was falling apart. Its once imposing hull was cracked and charred, slowly succumbing to the damage caused by the Ares' relentless barrage. The air on the bridge of the Ares was thick with tension, but also a grim sense of hope. For the first time in hours, Caldwell felt a flicker of optimism, but it was fleeting. The Icarans weren't finished yet. They would come at Earth with everything they had, and Caldwell knew she had only one shot left to win. "Lieutenant Jacobs' status report," Caldwell barked, her voice cutting through the noise of the bridge. Jacobs was focused on the tactical display, his hands flying over the console. Sweat dripped from his brow, his face taut with concentration. "The flagship is losing power, Captain, but we've got multiple Icaran reinforcements approaching from the rear. They've already started to form another formation to counter us." Caldwell's stomach twisted. The Icarans wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Their fleet, once scattered, was now consolidating its power for a final assault. Earth was still outnumbered, and the Ares, though heavily damaged, was the only thing standing between the Icarans and victory. "We need to get to their command ship," Caldwell said, her voice low but firm. "That flagship isn't done yet, and if they regroup, we'll be in even worse trouble." "Captain, we can't afford another direct assault," Jacobs protested, looking up from the console. "The ship's already damaged, and there are more of them. If we go in again, we risk everything." Caldwell met his gaze with unwavering determination. "Then we make them pay for every second they've spent here. We'll take the fight to them." Her voice was cold, but there was an undeniable fire behind it. She knew that this was their last chance. She wouldn't let Earth fall, not on her watch. "Prepare the Ares for an evasive maneuver," she ordered. "We're going in again. Full speed ahead." As Jacobs relayed the orders, Caldwell's mind raced. They had no time to waste. The Icarans were already closing in on them, and their firepower was more than enough to finish off what was left of the Ares. But she had a plan, a risky one. She wasn't about to lose the battle simply because the odds were stacked against them. Humanity had always been at its best when cornered. It was time to prove that once again. The Ares surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it cut through space toward the crippled Icaran flagship. Caldwell's grip tightened on the command console, every nerve in her body focused on the task ahead. The countdown was ticking. Every second mattered now. "Shields at 30%, Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice tight with anxiety. "Hull integrity is compromised. We can't take much more of this." Caldwell's jaw clenched, but she didn't flinch. "We have no choice. Full power to the engines." The Ares veered sharply, dodging a series of laser blasts from the approaching Icaran ships. The sleek, predatory vessels snapped at the Ares' tail, but Caldwell's expert piloting kept them at bay, just barely. "Enemy ships closing in," Jacobs called. "We can't keep them off for long." The tension in the air was suffocating. Caldwell glanced at the tactical display, then at the Icaran flagship. Its reactor was unstable, but it was still operational. The enemy was regrouping, their ships moving into position. The countdown was almost over. There would be no more second chances. "Target their reactor again," Caldwell ordered. "This time, we finish it." "Captain, they've reinforced their shields," Jacobs warned, his fingers dancing across the console. "We'll need to disable their shields first if we want to hit the reactor." Caldwell nodded, a single thought burning in her mind. The Ares had one advantage: the Icaran fleet wasn't expecting another direct strike. They had become complacent, thinking the first attack had weakened humanity's resolve. Now they would learn that Earth would never surrender. "Fire everything we have," she commanded. The Ares cannons lit up, firing in rapid succession toward the Icaran flagship. But the enemy shields flared, absorbing much of the blast. The Ares rocked with the recoil, its systems straining under the pressure. But Caldwell's eyes never left the display. The flagship's shields were weakening. "Captain, their shields are down to 10%, Jacobs said, his voice a mix of relief and dread. "This is our last shot." Caldwell nodded once, her expression resolute. "Lock on to their reactor core. Fire!" The Ares unleashed its full power, a focused blast of energy that tore through space toward the Icaran flagship. For a moment, everything seemed to slow. The explosion hit the flagship squarely in its weakened shields, and the ship lurched violently, as if recoiling from the force. But the flagship didn't explode. Instead, it began to crumble from the inside out, a sickening cascade of energy pouring out from the breach. The Ares watched in silence as the enemy ship flickered, and then, suddenly, disintegrated in a burst of light so bright that it illuminated the dark void of space. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the remaining Acheran fleet, and chaos erupted. "Status on the enemy fleet?" Caldwell asked, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. "Enemy ships are in disarray, Captain," Jacobs replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "The flagship's destruction has caused widespread panic. Their formations are collapsing." Caldwell allowed herself a moment of relief, but only a moment. The battle wasn't over yet, and the remaining Acheran ships were still a formidable threat. The Ares had delivered the blow, but Earth had more fighting to do. "We need to finish this," Caldwell said, standing tall. "Coordinate with Earth Command. We're going to take back control of our planet." She turned to her crew, her expression unwavering. "Prepare the fleet for the final push. We're not stopping until every last Acheran ship is disabled." As the Ares charged forward, the once imposing Acheran fleet now on the defensive, Caldwell knew the fight for Earth wasn't just a battle of weapons and ships. It was a battle of wills. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and today, they would show the universe what Earth was capable of. Today, they would prove that no matter how advanced the enemy, no matter the odds stacked against them, Earth would never be defeated. With a final surge of power, the Ares led the charge. The battle for Earth was far from over, but for the first time since the conflict began, Caldwell felt the weight of victory within reach.